Right, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, the fourth speaker today, fifth keynote, or rather, let me see, yeah, okay. Our fifth keynote is entitled Quality Testing. He has deep domain knowledge in life sciences and meditech, having worked almost his career in this field. So John has written several articles and book contributions, also an active member of special interest groups in software testing, and he has held various positions in testing and had previously been the president of the Danish Software Testing Board. John is a regular speaker at various testing conferences. And John Fodeh heads the life sciences and meditech business in Gemini, Denmark, with more than 23 years of experience in IT and software testing, with an extensive expertise in quality management process, improvement, testing tools, automation, and strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Mr. John Fodeh.
All right, great. I think I'm between you and the afternoon break, so I know you're tired. Hopefully you got your energy level still up. This is actually not my first time here in Malaysia. I've been a few times, as mentioned, and I'm here with my family. I told my family, you want to come and see your dad in action? And they told me, Dad, we see you a lot. We don't see Kuala Lumpur that often. Maybe we can walk around and explore Malaysia, and you can explore the conference. So that's the deal. And I have actually also, probably the term path testing. In software testing, the term path testing. Path testing is about testing different paths in the software or different scenarios in the system. Now, I applied that in real life in Malaysia. So the first time was here. I did a path from here to Cameron Highlands and then to Penang. Spent some time there, up to Langkawi and back again. Second time, I did a path to Borneo, where I spent some time in Sarawak. The third path I took was to Tamanagara, and actually to Redang as well. So I have a kind of a fallback kind of solution in case things will fail for me in business and testing. Then I can become your local tourist guide here in Malaysia. All right. So what I want to do today is give you kind of a digest of the other speakers' content and present it in a mostly kind of a holistic way, putting things together. And the theme of what I'm going to present is quality testing. And I have a lot of stuff here, including some videos, and I'm actually going to, throughout my session, I'm going to ask you to do an exercise, an interactive exercise. So there's a big likelihood that things will not work because of technology, but being a testing conference, it kind of proves my point, doesn't it? Yeah. So let's get started on this. All right, so first of all, we've all gone through COVID-19, and for many of us, I don't know how about you guys, but it feels sometimes like you're waking up from a coma. 3 years have been kind of gone. What happened? No one knows. And it has a really devastating impact in terms of in the health area. And I don't want to get into this. It can become quite gloomy and depressing, so I don't want to discuss this. And of course, on the business side, it has also been quite difficult. And I've picked up some headlines from the newspapers about a year and a half back, in the beginning of 2020. I think it was March, April that year. First statement was regarding the collapse of business models. I think it was quite evident for many businesses that if they relied solely on physical interaction with the customers, then they had a problem. This is what was a wake-up call for many businesses, that they need to kind of rewire the way they do business, the business models, and do it differently. Another part was regarding engaging with people. Obviously, there's a notion that, out of sight, out of mind, and it can indeed be difficult having those connections between people without having this physical interaction. Now, I assume it's the same for you. I mean, you've gone through your working from home, virtual meetings, and it's not the same. It's nice being here, seeing people in 3D and being able to maybe shake hands or you say hello, and it creates a different kind of connection between yourself and your fellow co-workers or your business co-worker or actually the counter desk at a certain agency. It's an entirely different way of doing business. Third thing was about supply chains. I don't know how about you here in Malaysia, how it was, but in Denmark, for example, suddenly there were some certain groceries we couldn't buy in the supermarket. I went shopping for coconut oil, I couldn't find it, out of stock. We kind of quickly discovered that we are relying on maybe too few sources when it comes to supply chain. We are less resilient. Fourth point was regarding lack of corporate governance. For many companies, it was also a wake-up call that they lacked that kind of resilience within the company. They didn't know about what to do when this kind of things happen. And the last point was regarding about the need for having this working from home culture, remote connectivity, broadband network connections, etc. Those companies were hit by surprise. Last impact is, of course, regarding prices. I think we're still suffering from that. We've seen, some prices going up as high as 25, 50% even in certain cases. I don't know how it is in Malaysia, but in Denmark, where I come from, we've seen a big hike in the prices of everything almost. If we look at, the theme of the conference is, testing for business survival. And I think most of the businesses that did survive were able to cope with some of those challenges. So, we all had our shots. Some of us even had been infected. Myself, I got 3 shots, yet I got infected back in April, May this year. So anyway, and I think most of you have been through the same. Now we're getting up to work, business are opening. So are we back to normal? Not really. I think we've learned something throughout the COVID-19 situation. We've learned that certain ways of collaboration of working have changed. Back to the challenges mentioned before, we've learned that we can do things differently. And maybe we should keep doing things differently in order to survive for the next journey, for the next pandemic, for the next crisis. And I've even heard people talking about the next normal. What is the next normal? This is actually a step beyond the new normal. What is driving this? 2017, I was here in SOFTECAsia talking about the SMAC stack. I think I had a session called Smack Your Testing. SMAC stands for Social, Mobility, Analytics, Cloud. And the idea behind that was basically how those factors were kind of redesigning and reshaping our industry and the way we do business and the way also we do testing. Guess what? Throughout COVID-19, this has further accelerated. We had this talk this morning, Professor Jasper talking about, how the digital transformation, and the digital transformation kind of continued down that path, adding AI, artificial intelligence, 5G networks, for example, laying the foundation for self-driving cars, connected devices, etc. Augmented reality, Internet of Things. We also heard this morning about how things are getting connected. I've spoke with one of my technical colleagues, and he told me, John, everything that has a cost above $5 and it's not something you can eat will probably be connected in a year or two. And if you look at how many devices and products you have that are connected, it's amazing. I went to IKEA the other day, and there was a connected carpet. Connected carpet, who needs a connected carpet? But there was a connected carpet. Myself, I have a connected refrigerator and a smart TV, also on the internet. I recently got a present, which is a new shaver. The first thing you need to do in order to enable the shaver to work is install an app and then connect it to the internet. So I have a shaver that is on the internet. I don't know what my shaver is doing on the internet. I don't know if it's watching Netflix or, I don't know, browsing, I don't know. But this is becoming a reality. Everything is connected. And this is actually leading to maybe the next phase, what we call the metaverse. Have you heard this term? The metaverse is the new bigger thing that is going to happen. So this is, probably heard that Facebook actually rebranded themselves. Now they call themselves Meta. Now Meta basically is the convergence of the physical and the virtual world coming together at once. And I had one of my colleagues explaining this to me. He told me, well, the metaverse actually represents the next stage of the internet, enabling people to connect in a virtual world, experience real-life feelings. These public and private decentralized 3D virtual spaces will deliver online digital CX, meaning customer experience, and EX, meaning employee experience, generated by a sense of presence and space, speech, gesture, touch, and even smell. Sounds a bit futuristic, isn't it? And some of you might think of maybe this is the beginning of HAL 9000 or The Matrix or Skyfall. Typically Hollywood has kind of a gloomy kind of view of where we're heading. But let me give you a snapshot of a feeling of what it's all about. This is where we're heading. Actually, this is not science fiction. This is where we are today. Let's take a step, and take a step back and see it from a business side. If we look at the kind of things that are impacting, the metaverse, how it's impacting the business, there are 5 different dimensions. And being a person coming from life sciences and medtech, I'm going to give you some examples from that domain. First point is about the digital backbone. What do we mean by that? Now, previously we had siloed applications in the landscape. We had a backend system, ERP, you have CRM, and you have your online customer-facing applications. Of course, you had some databases, file system in the backend, etc. These used to be working in silos, not connected, and you used to manually take some of the data, the artifacts from this one, and feeding into this one, and then from this one to the other one. Now it's all about blurring those silos and having one coherent platform that can work together. I'll get back to that point, because we'll discuss what's the impact from a testing point of view. Second one, agile platforms. This one we all know. This one is all about how we can collaborate efficiently in a distributed team globally. For example, using Zoom, using Teams. I think most of you have done this. Smart products, I was mentioning before, a connected carpet, an example of how basically all companies are kind of embracing the new opportunities that technology bring and feeding those into new chain of product. Smart services. New services typically that are creating new revenue streams for many of those companies. Many of those companies realize, for example, that they can make money out of the data that they have on you. So, for example, Facebook is free, isn't it? You think so? Well, the kind of where they make money is on the data, on the knowledge they have on you, each and every one of you. This is a new revenue stream. That was about customer centricity. It all revolves about the end user, you. Getting closer to the end users, providing personalized, for example, in healthcare and in life sciences, about providing personalized treatment. And there are certain degrees of those. Let me give you an example. A few years back, life science companies launched, for example, some apps that will enable them to track side effects, to monitor your treatment, how it goes. For example, I tell you, you need to take 3 pills a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, one in the evening. Yeah? And then you can enter the data into the app, and it will be passed back to the backend system. An advancement in that is actually using software more intelligently. For example, using software to exactly measure the dose that you need, for example, for treating your diabetes. Having an insulin pump, it will be able to treat you with the exact amount of medicine that you need. So it's not that you need 2 pills in the morning, 2 pills in the afternoon, and 2 pills in the evening, but no, you need exactly 600 milligrams because I know this is what you need as a patient. Now, where we're going to, and this is mind-blowing, we're talking about something called software as medical device. Have you heard about that term? And digital therapeutics. This is where software is being used as part of the treatment itself. Even to a degree where software can replace some of the medicine. Isn't that amazing? Give you an idea. There's a condition called lazy eye. I don't know if you heard about that, but basically lazy eye is basically when your eyes are out of sync. Maybe that's the simplest way of putting it. And you can treat that different ways. Of course, you can they have special glasses you can put on. You can also use a patch. And also you can use medicine, actually eye drops, by actually putting some drops in the strong eye so it can become a bit blurry, then the eye can learn to compensate. Also use surgery. Now actually you can also use software. Project we've been involved in, we created actually an iPad game actually that's all about training the eye to be able to recover from that condition and ultimately replacing the medicine. So here actually you're replacing actual drugs with software. Isn't that mind-blowing? So what does it mean to testing? Of course, we are in the beginning of a new age where basically we are seeing the emerge of the so-called metaverse that we talked about before. We know it's all about providing a personalized, frictionless, omni-channel customer journey throughout an interconnected, scalable, and secure platform. Why am I reading it out? This is a statement coming from one of my colleagues, a more technical guy. And he told me, John, this is all about the metaverse, and the new reality is about this, being able to provide this. And well, quality is key. And here, of course, when we talk about quality testing, there are two aspects. One of them is the quality, testing the quality, meaning making sure that you have the right measures, right, that Carol talked about, on the different quality characteristics, and be able to define quality and measure it and test it. The other part is about improving the quality of testing itself. So this is like the yin and yang of quality testing. Let's zoom in on the first one. First of all, what is quality? You probably heard this fable about the 7 men and the 7 blind men and the elephant. Have you heard about that story? Where each person's trying to describe the elephant, but each person has a different view, because one is actually touching the trunk, another one is touching the leg, third one is touching the tail, etc. You know that story. When it comes to quality, it's a bit similar. Let me try to do now a visual exercise. You have your phones with you? Let's try to gauge the definition of software quality at SOFTEC 2022, okay? So you need to go to menti.com and enter the code, or actually scan the barcode on the top. And I'll ask you to do two things. One is enter your definition of quality. It can be 1 up to 3 words or statements, and then press submit. Only 2 things. Did you manage to get to the website? Are you doing it? As mentioned, there's a big chance that it will not work, but let's see. Hey, it's coming up. 3 guys, only 4 guys. Okay, that's good, good. Let me see some more answers. 10, okay. Fantastic. No bugs. Wow, validated. Stable. Wow. Keep going. I have 34 responses. 36. All right, that's good, guys. Okay. I started an avalanche. Wow. So this is basically kind of capturing the definition of software quality at SOFTEC 22. We have reliability, functionality, security, acceptance, performance. Thank you. Very interesting. I think the point is, when we talk about software quality, there are different definitions. And let me see if I told it's going to go wrong, so let me see. Apparently, I'm not able to stop it, so. All right. So one of the definitions I've seen in the past is that, of course, it's conformance to requirements. Now, I think it was mentioned also by Carol before, so imagine that you have a chair. If you create a chair that is conforming to the requirements and you can sit on it, then basically this is quality. This is the definition by Crosby. Another one is fitness for use. Well, you might have created exactly according to the specifications, but if it doesn't fit if I cannot sit in it, then it's maybe not the best chair. Maybe doesn't then comply with my required definition. And I love this one from the Ming. It's about quality is the pride of workmanship. Now imagine that I have an antique piece of furniture. Now you know that it is not about conformance to requirements. You know, there are certain deviations in the tolerances. It's the handcraft, it's the passion, it's the art that has been put into creating this piece of art that is important. This is the definition of quality. I love this definition. Another one is value for money. Obviously, there's a limit of how much you want to pay for quality. So obviously, there's some certain point in time there's a cost element in that. But what's important is that quality is in the eye of the beholder. And we saw in the previous exercise that you all had your definition of quality. So the conclusion is, of course, quality is a multidimensional entity. Let me ask you, if quality is a multidimensional entity and you want to test for quality, what do you need to do? You need to test multiple dimensions. Some of them they were there on the former slides. ISO 25010 is actually an attempt to kind of organize those quality criteria into some main characteristics and sub-characteristics. So as you probably see here, the definition is that software product quality is composed of functional suitability, performance efficiency, compatibility, usability, reliability, security, maintainability, and portability. Each of those can be broken down further to sub-characteristics. So for example, if we take compatibility, it's composed of coexistence and interoperability. Now it's important to know that some of those characteristics might be external, customer-facing, while others are internal. Which one is internal, for example? Anyone? Maintainability. Why? Your customer doesn't care about how maintainable your system is. This is more an internal thing. You, of course, it's important for you, maybe your organization, to have a maintainable system so it becomes less a burden of coming up with a new version, a new upgrade. But from an end user perspective, they don't care about how your software is organized. The others are mostly external or have an external application. Another important factor to recognize is that some of those quality characteristics might be conflicting with one another, others might be supporting one another. An example, security and functionality. Conflicting or supportive? Can be to a certain extent conflicting. For example, when you get a message saying either your password or your user ID is incorrect, from a usability perspective, they might say, okay, why it's not telling me which one is incorrect? But from a security perspective, of course, it's best that you don't know which one is incorrect. Okay? And so on. Performance is often very conflicted with almost all the others. But my point is, when you look at your software product and you want to determine your test approach, you need to define what constitutes quality for you. This is where the product owner comes into the picture. Because it might be in certain organizations that portability basically is not needed. So you need to kind of define, of course, which of those are important for you, and maybe some of the sub-characteristics you can make as become a main characteristic. It's up to you to define that. And then conduct your testing to prove those points. Many of us in testing have been focusing on functionality, haven't we? This is where we excel. This is kind of maybe the starting point for many of us, including myself. I see all the others as opportunities for me to expand, upskill, cross-skill, and learn and become more efficient as a tester. Because believe it or not, those are becoming more and more important. Why? Let's have a look.
Play jazz.
Playing jazz.
Smoothie.
Making smoothie.
Calendar.
No meetings today. Remember, dentist at 9:30.
Fire off.
Fire off.
Open door.
Door open.
And we're gonna do one more.
Oh yeah. Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open door.
Wrong voice command.
Open. Open door.
Repeat that.
Open door.
I didn't understand that.
Hey! Open door!
Play on the floor.
Get over the door! Open the door!
Wrong
Open the
voice
door!
command. Error.
Hey meneer, goedemiddag. Open door. Open door. Open door. Open door. Higher.
Higher volume.
Higher.
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 In this interconnected world, the metaverse, I believe the need for testing is greater than ever. Why? Because the chain is never stronger than the weakest link. And when I mentioned before the example of having these monolithic systems being siloed and now being talking to each other, think about in the past, if you have a defect here, it will only be contained in this system. If another defect in this system, it will only be contained in this one. Problem is now we have all these interconnected systems. Even the ability to access the system from different channels, omni-channel, mobile phones, browsers, phones, devices, etc. Functionality, on the other hand, maybe is becoming less important. Why? Because some of the new apps are building on cloud technologies, software, for example, as a service, etc., where you would assume that, for example, if you're relying on a Microsoft technology or SAP, that they have done a lot of testing on their basic functionality. What you need to focus on, of course, is where you've done changes, the connections between the systems, and some of those non-functional aspects I covered before. It's all about user experience. The user experience, actually, it's kind of what entails all aspects of the user interaction with the application and services. One part of it is user interface. The user interface is basically how you can control and accomplish certain tasks in a system. And then you have, of course, what you call usability testing. This is basically testing that is done to evaluate the degree to which a system can be used by users with effectiveness and efficiency and satisfaction in a specified context of use. And I think the word context is becoming extremely important. You show back before there, in the example of this guy who has this connected house, the context, understanding the context of usage is becoming extremely important. Understanding that, for example, you might have weird conditions where you're coming back from a dentist might impact your ability to interface with the system. This is basically where the new possibilities that we should see as testers. User experience is a lot about emotions, our feelings about the systems. It's about identifying the personas, the scenarios, the functionalities that need to complete the task, why basically UI it has more of a product focus. We can only cover some aspect of user experience as testers because there are such certain skills that go over and above what we can do in testing. Of course, also some legal and ethical aspects, of course, that are much beyond and in the bigger picture. I think most of you have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is basically about motivational behavior. This is about what kind of things you need to have fulfilled at the basic level before you get up to the higher level. The highest level is what we call self-actualization. This is where basically you want to give back to society. This is where you want to swim with dolphins and want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and these kind of things. Of course, you don't get to that point if you don't have some of the other lower aspects fulfilled. I've seen though a newer version of this. You're young people, so you probably can recognize this. You have Wi-Fi at the bottom. The thing is, if you don't have Wi-Fi, your ability to find food and a shelter might be diminished. The worst thing that can happen is if you go out of power on your phone. If you're taking apply the same to the user experience, in my definition, of course, what we have in the bottom is deployability. You might have the best software in the world, but you're not able to find it, search for it, and install it in your system, then you will not discover how great the system is. Then you have the functionality, and as mentioned before, this is becoming a bit more diminishing. I'll give you an example. One of the most popular systems we have in Denmark is called Mobile Pay, and as the name indicates, it's for transfer of cash from one person to another. Very simple functionality. I just enter your phone number and then swipe it, then the money is transferred to Mastura. Thing is, what happens behind the scenes is impressive. You could have different banking system connecting, making sure connecting, of course, a mobile number to banking systems, and making sure that authentication is valid, and doing all the proper checking in a whole thing in milliseconds. So my point is, functionality maybe is becoming less important. Not that it's not important, but maybe it has decreased in value compared to the other aspects. Then you have interoperability. This is basically ability to talk between the different systems. This is what I was referring to, breaking the silos. We have another system in Denmark which is called Meet ID. Basically, it's an authentication system. And it's used with all communication to the government, to hospitals, making an appointment, for example, with a doctor, looking at your tax returns, also actually going to your bank systems and insurance companies. Fantastic. You only need one app to have access. But it also means that a hacker only needs to hack one app, and he has access. It also means that you only need to find one flaw in the system this way, and then you have the domino effect. It might actually bring down all the other systems. This is where testing becomes important. There's a new word actually called phygital. Have you heard that word? It's a new word. It's difficult to say, but the whole thing is about bringing the best of the physical experience into the digital sphere and vice versa. And basically, if we take, in terms of hierarchy, your ability to install the system as coming as a basis, that and having the basic functionality in place, then interoperability, having ability to communicate with all the applications in scope, and then of course, a non-functional aspect, security being one of the most important ones. The last one is, of course, usefulness. Is this app making my life easier? Is it useful for me? Is it providing value? Is it providing value to the degree that I can give it a thumb up and recommend it to others? I think it was mentioned by Carol before, the Net Promoter Score. It is so good for me that I'll be able to recommend it, so I can maybe kind of influence you to also install the app and use it. All right. So when it comes to quality testing, as mentioned, I believe there are two elements. One is the system quality, which is all about identifying the quality characteristics that you need to test and make sure that you have proper testing for those, and those are incorporated in your strategy. On the other hand, of course, making sure that you have quality testing. What do I mean by that? First of all, at the end of the day, I think Eric got a question this morning about, let's say your manager comes and says you only have 6 weeks for testing and not 8 weeks. How to go about this? And it's all about risk. 10-year management, okay, I have only 6 weeks, that's fine with me. Help me prioritize which are the most important functionalities to test, and we can just reduce the others. And I've been in a situation myself where I've gone through a risk analysis of all the functionalities in the system. It's a real-life experience. We did basically a basic risk evaluation. We have probability as one aspect, the other one is likelihood, the impact. And go through it one by one, all the functionalities. At the end of the day, you have then you can estimate, of course, what is the testing effort needed to cover those risks in the system. And we came up with a number that was 1,217 days. And we showed that to CIO, and he almost got a heart attack. Oh, 1,271 days, that's too much, that's three times the budget, we need to do less. How did you do this? How did you estimate this? So, you know what? We did this risk-based approach. We took all the functionalities and we did this assessment first of the impact from business perspective, then the likelihood from a technical perspective. Said, you know what? I want to do the same exercise with you guys. And then we went through it. It took an entire day, went through all the functionalities. And the idea was basically if it's high risk, high impact, meaning, and high likelihood, then it gets more testing. If it's very low risk, very low likelihood of happening, then it has less testing, even no testing. Went through the exercise. Guess what happened? Estimate went up to 1,600 days. Why? Because the CEO got scared, said, okay, I'm not willing to take that level of risk. So my point is, it all boils down to risk. And when we look at these interconnected systems, we need to understand about what is the likelihood of things going wrong and where it can happen, what the kind of strategy we need to apply. And here there are a number, of course, of important aspects. One is about coverage, making sure that you have appropriate coverage at different levels. It can be at code level, as mentioned by Eric this morning, about making sure that you have the proper unit testing in place and making sure that you have proper coverage of those unit tests. That's one thing. Can be on the system level, meaning coverage of the use cases or the function points that you have or the epics that you have defined. Or integrations, meaning making sure that you have all the browsers and all the devices that can be accessing my system, also testing in a proper way with a proper coverage across all those devices. And this is also where tools becoming extremely important, having the right tools where feasible. Most of us doing, for example, performance testing manually is doable, of course. You can, with a stopwatch and a crowd, you can do performance testing. You can ask everyone log on to the system and then measure time it takes long to the system. Simple way of doing it. A more efficient way of doing it is having a tool for that will create a certain load on the system and we can measure the response time. Last and not least, of course, communication. I think it was mentioned before. It is important that we as testers, we're not an island. Of course, we communicate efficiently with different stakeholders, either from business, from project management, development, etc. And having those efficient means of communication is becoming more critical for us. So this is where if we look at the statement, I ask you to remember this statement. It's all about providing personalized, frictionless, omni-channel user journey throughout an interconnected, scalable, and secure platform. Now, if I see this statement as a tester, I can immediately identify a number of things I need to worry about. One of personalized. For me, when I see personalized, it means that it's different from one user to another. It means that I need to create different personas, different scenarios, depending on the users, depending on the context of the system. Omnichannel. What does it mean? It means probably that I need also to make sure that my testing also had a number of devices to be tested on, maybe iOS systems, maybe Android devices, iPads, etc. Make sure that I have coverage across those. Interconnected. This is an opportunity for doing a lot of integration testing, API testing. Scalable. Performance, scalability, load testing, and secure. Back to the point regarding cybersecurity testing, the importance of that as well. Now, this is where basically we have the rise of the metaverse tester. This is you guys. Maybe now, maybe in 2 years, maybe in a few years. Now, a superhero has typically certain powers, superpowers. And the metaverse tester has also a number of superpowers in different areas. One is domain knowledge. Another one is in the usability area, technical expertise, and testing expertise. For a very long time, we've been focusing on one area, on functional testing. And I think this is for us an opportunity to look into other areas, expanding our horizon, cross-skill our teams, upskill, and make sure, of course, we can cope with some of those challenges. Some of this we know quite well. I mean, most of us know this area and this area, but some of the others might be new for us. Let me give you a few examples. Usability testing, A/B testing. Have you heard about A/B testing? A/B testing is testing done in production. It's even done with you without you knowing it, actually. So it's done in a way that, for example, LinkedIn has a certain new feature. Provide the two versions simultaneously. Present only to half of the group. So this half of the group will be using one version, the other half of the group will be using another version. And then they measure what is the conversion rate of A versus B. If B is more efficient, then it'll go B with B. This is continuous testing going on in production. This is some of the topics I'm going to explain tomorrow in my workshops. Eye tracking, basically it measures where you're looking when you're using an application. Are you looking correctly at the buttons that you're supposed to look at, or whether you're distracted by certain elements in the graphical user interface? Usability analysis guidelines as well. Web usability, what do I mean by that? There are certain accessibility requirements. Actually, in some countries like in the EU and US, you have even a law that where you're obliged to provide software that people with disabilities can use. Meaning having, for example, ability to use screen readers, ability to have people that are colorblind use the systems, etc. And these are being mandated by law. And there are certain tools that you can use to make sure that your systems can comply with those requirements. I think for too long we may be focusing on this area. I mean, some of those we know. Risk-based testing have been kind of a core concept in all testing activities we've done in the past, and it remains become a very important part of that. But I think risk-based testing in relation to all of the other components is becoming increasingly important. All right. Another important aspect is using analytics. Now, the definition of analytics is basically the process of identifying, collecting, and measuring and monitoring information based on user actions. Now, for many years, we've been using in testing and requirement and software development in general what we call Chinese whispers. Do you know this game? Where basically maybe I'll whisper something in your ear, and you whisper it in her ear, and so forth, and at the end it probably gets distorted. Yeah. We've been doing software development and testing for a long time using this method. What do I mean by that? We want to test. Typically it goes like this, that you have some kind of a sales guy who hasn't been in contact with an end user, and the sales guy combined with the marketing guys start collecting the requirements. And those requirements then are being fed to the lead architect, and this lead architect starts putting his interpretation of those requirements. And then this lead architect passes it on to the functional analyst who writes the requirements. Then the testers comes into the picture, and he or her write the test case based on her understanding of those functional requirements. Now, guess what? Often, it's a bit like the Chinese whispers. You end up with a very distorted version of the original content. Of course, the whole concept behind Agile is to move away from that, making sure that you have end users embedded into the process, making sure that you have very short cycles, and by the start of and the end of each cycle, you make sure that you loop the end users back in and get their feedback to make sure that you can have a representative understanding of what the current requirement is. And guess what? Requirements will change and evolve over time. Why? Because users don't always know what they want to start with. It is also difficult with a very complex system to have kind of understanding of what you need maybe in 9 months down the line. maybe you learn something, maybe you get more intelligent along the way. So by applying agile techniques and by using analytics, we're able to feed back this information into the testing. We can identify in a much easier way, the concrete user needs, and also maybe needs that have not been explicitly described by the users, some of the latent needs. Can also help us detect areas that need focus in testing. Maybe we have forgotten actually to look in this particular functionality because we assumed that it has been already tested before, or maybe we assume that the user have a certain reputation of how the user should be of the system. Also using a risk-based approach, making sure that we can, if we know, for example, that just by looking at Google Analytics that, for example, our system is being used in a certain number of devices and operating systems, we can be much more clever in the way we target our testing. Maybe there's no need of doing testing on some of the devices that only 2% will use. Maybe we can live with the fact that, okay, they will complain and we can handle it in this way. Okay, maybe it's not a big deal. But if we are kind of forgetting the bigger chunk of the users, and not including those in the risk-based testing, then we're in trouble. Of course, it's all about optimizing the test coverage and getting the early feedback about the quality in use. All right. So, getting towards the end of my talk, I believe in order for us in business to survive, succeed, and thrive, of course, we need to change the way we do business. Equally in testing, if we want to survive, succeed, and thrive in testing, we need to adopt to the next normal, maybe the step above the new normal. With user experience at heart, making sure that we have captured all the functional and non-functional aspects, but very importantly, not forgetting that at the end of the day, someone needs to use the system, making sure that the user requirements are being met. So to summarize, I think COVID-19 has presented us with a lot of challenges, a lot of tough times, but also an opportunity to learn. I believe, as mentioned, testing is becoming more important than ever, simply because of the fact that the chain is not stronger than the weakest link. And it is for us as testers, the main objective is to find that weak link and make sure we do proper testing on that link. And I mentioned risk and testing numerous times, and when we look about risks, there are different ways of managing risks. One is can be accepting the risk, looking the other way and say, okay, it will happen, but I need to accept it. Another way would be trying to fight the change and see if we can maybe combat it. Third one would be, let's embrace it. Let's look at all these opportunities that the change is bringing and turn that to a strength. Turn that to some of those superpowers that, the metaverse tester can pick up. And with those words, I will say thank you for your attention.